So we are continuing with the chapter called memory, and we're going to be talking about different types of memory that exist. So let's look at something called explicit memory. Um, Memory of facts and experiences. Now, this involves effortful processing, and that's maybe the key word to explicit memory, the term effortful processing, meaning you have to think about it, you have to stop, you have to pause, and go back and think, oh yeah, when is that? When did that happen? And then you think, and then so anytime we're talking about explicit memory, we're talking about effortful processing, thinking, and making a deliberate thought process. So we could break it down, explicit memories, into two categories. There's something called episodic memories, and those are autobiographical. If I ask you, okay, when is your mother's birthday? Can you name a piñata that you had when you were a child? Do you remember the time frame of the funeral of one of your grandparents? This is episodic memories. You have to stop. You have to think, okay, did I have a piñata? What kind was it? These require effortful processing. Now, the other type of explicit memory, because there's two, there's episodic and then there's semantic. And semantic memory are words and meanings and definitions, and this is for a very specific little subculture that you belong to. For example, if you're part of the drill team, there's terms that are used in the drill team that other people are not going to know what that means. If you have a part-time job at, say, Little Caesars, there's going to be codes and words that they use at Little Caesars that other people, they're not going to know what that means. Semantic words, semantic, are very specific to the little subculture that you belong to, whether it's football, athletics, or if you work at a comic book store. Those are very explicit words that other people are not going to know what they mean. Now, so that's explicit memory. Remember, explicit is effortful processing, not to be confused with implicit. Implicit memory is retention of learned skills without having to retrieve it. The key word for implicit is it's instinctual, it's automatic. It's something that you learned and it's in there forever and you don't have to try and do it. For example, riding a bike or driving. Once you learn how to ride a bike, once you learn how to drive, it's in there. It's part of your implicit memory. You don't have to stop and think about it. No. It is all instinctual. That is implicit memory. So make sure you know the difference between explicit, which is effortful, and implicit, which is instinctual. Now, another type of memory is something called flashbulb memory. And this is a clear memory, emotionally significant moment or event. Your mind creates a picture of it and it's forever in there. Now, it could be something that is very, very good, or it could be something that is very, very bad, or just something that is very, very memorable. You will always remember it because it's so dramatic, either in a good way or a bad way. A quick example is when I was 4 years old, I received a black eye from my cousin. He accidentally collided into me and he gave me a black eye. I remember it to this day. This was my cousin Ricky, and we were in the car driving. My uncle turned dramatically and we collided and he gave me a black eye. And I actually remember that it hurt. 3-year-olds actually can hold some memories, and it's usually a flashbulb memory. If they remember, like, for example, something very dramatic, let's say they saw their father fall off of the ladder, or if they saw their mom crying hysterically because something really upset her. 3-year-olds can't hold memories, especially if it's something that was very, very dramatic. Another example of a flashbulb memory is when I was 12 years old. We were driving to Houston and we heard this tremendous noise, and we were passed by this motorcycle club, and I just remember looking at them and thinking to myself that all of them looked really, really cool, and I liked looking at the motorcycles, and I remember it. I don't remember anything else from that trip, to be honest. I just remember this hearing the sound of the motorcycles and all of them passing by me when we were on our way to Houston. And another example of flashbulb memory is sometimes there are podcasts that I'll listen to, and they'll talk about paranormal activity, and people are using their flashbulb memory. They're talking about a time that they were staying at a place and they happen to hear a noise, or they happen to see something that is forever implanted in their brain because it was such a horrifying event. So here we have a couple of examples of flashbulb memory. Now, one of the tricks that can help you with your memory as you continue your academic career and you take more and more classes are something referred to as mnemonics. And these are memory aids for vivid imagery and organization. Mnemonics will help you take a test. Mnemonics will help you pass a class. And some of you use them all the time. You're just not familiar with the word mnemonics. So an example would be if you have to remember the Great Lakes for a geography class, you could just remember, Holmes, Lake Huron, Lake Ontario, Lake Michigan, Lake Erie, Lake Superior. Some of you are familiar with this one, Roy G. Biv, right? You're familiar with Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. In grammar class, maybe you use fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Scuba, self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. Maybe you're using acrostics as well. For example, you'll come up with, King Philip can only find green slippers. And this is for science, biology, I should say. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus. Now, the other one is Mercy, Vera, Ellen made Johnny sit under 9 planks. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, so on and so forth. And then the last one, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally when you're doing math. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division. So these will help you, and I encourage you to use them whenever you are taking an exam. Now, one of the things about psychology is that it is, in my opinion, very easy to learn psychology as opposed to, say, other classes, because you can use it for yourself and you can apply it to examples from your own life. And this is called the self-reference effect. We have especially good recall for information we can relate to ourselves. For example, I gave you the definition of flashbulb memory. I'm sure when you think about your own life and your own childhood, you could have an example of a flashbulb memory. So when it comes to psychology, sometimes people say, I really liked it. And the reason for that is because, you can apply it to yourself. You can use the definitions and think of your own examples from your own life. And this is the self-reference effect. Having really good recall for information that we can apply to our very own life. Now, when it comes to studying, I did tell you that mnemonics will help you a lot, and they will. But another thing to keep in mind is when you're studying is something referred to as the serial position effect, meaning our tendency to recall best the last and first items on a list. So if you have 20 things on a list, you're going to remember the first things on the list and the last things on the list. So if you try to study 20 things on a list, well, maybe you should break it down and just study 5 things at a time. Remember, when studying, it helps to use flashcards and to study in short bursts. If you study for 1 hour, you're going to remember things from the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes. Therefore, maybe you should only study for 5 minutes at a time. Study for 5 minutes, then you take a break. Study for 5 minutes, then you text a friend. You study for 5 minutes, then you make a sandwich. Study for 5 minutes, and then you do something else. We're only going to remember the first and the last things if you study for a long period of time. So make sure you study for short periods of time. Because if you're going to remember the first and the last things, well, then make sure that time is very, very short. And this is the serial position effect.